The day she walked back into his life was not loud or dramatic, yet it hit harder than any storm he had ever known. The courthouse hallway smelled of old paper and disinfectant, and time seemed to slow when he saw her standing there, hands resting protectively over her stomach. He had come prepared to sign papers, to end a chapter with cold efficiency, but his breath caught when his eyes traced the unmistakable curve beneath her loose shawl. 7 months pregnant. The truth struck him so suddenly that the world felt unreal, like a scene frozen in a film where the background fades and only one impossible detail remains in focus. Before the story pulls you deeper into this moment, take a second to pause. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who believes love can heal, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. He had rehearsed this day in his mind 100 times. He imagined indifference, imagined strength, imagined himself calm and unaffected. But none of those rehearsals prepared him for the way guilt rose in his chest when he looked at her face and saw not anger, but exhaustion. The woman he once loved looked thinner, quieter, as if life had been asking too much of her for too long. Memories flooded him without permission, of shared laughter in a tiny kitchen, of late nights talking about dreams that once felt possible. Back then, love had felt simple. Now it felt like something fragile he had dropped and never picked up again. Their marriage had not ended with betrayal or dramatic conflict. It ended with silence. Misunderstandings grew into distance, distance into cold routines, and eventually into two people living in the same space but in entirely different worlds. He buried himself in work, convincing himself that providing was the same as caring. She waited, hoping he would notice her loneliness, hoping he would fight for them. When he didn't, she slowly stopped asking. The separation felt inevitable, almost logical, yet the pain lingered like a shadow neither of them could escape. She had left months ago, packing quietly, leaving behind a note that said she needed peace. He told himself she would be fine, that she was strong, that this was for the best. He never asked where she went. He never imagined she would be carrying a life they once dreamed of having together. Seeing her now, he realized how little he truly knew about the consequences of his absence. As they waited for their turn, the silence between them grew heavy. He noticed small details that made his chest tighten, the way her fingers trembled slightly, the dark circles under her eyes, the careful way she stood as if every movement required effort. He wondered how many nights she had spent alone, how many fears she had faced without him. The divorce papers suddenly felt meaningless compared to the weight of what stood between them. When they finally sat down to finalize the separation, reality pressed in. This was supposed to be the end, a clean break, yet nothing about this moment felt clean. His mind raced with questions he was afraid to answer. Why hadn't she told him? Did she plan to raise the child alone? Did she still hate him, or was there something else behind her silence? Each unanswered thought felt like a quiet accusation. He remembered the day they first talked about having children, sitting on a rooftop watching city lights flicker below. They spoke about names, about the kind of parents they wanted to be. Back then, he promised he would always be there. That promise echoed painfully in his mind now, mocking him with its broken certainty. She came to finalize the divorce not out of anger, but out of necessity. Life had forced her to become practical. She had learned to survive without leaning on hope. The pregnancy had changed everything for her, making her stronger in ways she never expected, but also more cautious. She needed stability, clarity, and peace for the child growing inside her. Holding onto a marriage that existed only on paper felt pointless. As he signed his name, his hand shook. He realized that walking away now would be the easiest thing to do, and also the most cowardly. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, heavier than any work deadline or financial burden he had ever faced. This was not about pride or hurt anymore. This was about a life that deserved more than his silence. Over the following days, something inside him shifted. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about the unborn child, about the man he had become without noticing. Regret is a strange thing. It doesn't scream, it whispers, replaying moments you wish you could rewrite. He thought about all the times he chose convenience over connection, all the times he assumed love would wait. Now love had moved on, carrying consequences he could no longer ignore. He reached out, not with grand gestures, but with humility. He offered support without demands, presence without expectations. He showed up quietly, helping where he could, listening more than speaking. At first, she remained distant, her trust worn thin by disappointment. But consistency has a way of softening even the strongest walls. Slowly, she began to see that this was not the man who had emotionally disappeared months ago. This was someone trying, imperfectly, to make things right. The pregnancy became a turning point for both of them. For her, it was a reminder of strength she didn't know she possessed. For him, it was a wake-up call that stripped away excuses. He learned that love is not proven through words or intentions, but through daily choices. He learned that showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, matters more than any apology. As time passed, their interactions grew warmer, though still cautious. They talked about practical things, about the future, about fears they never voiced before. Healing did not come quickly or easily. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and old wounds that reopened unexpectedly. But there was also growth, honesty, and a shared understanding that something meaningful was at stake. The day the child was born, the world felt different. Holding that tiny life, he felt both overwhelming joy and deep remorse for the time he had wasted. He promised himself that this child would never question his presence or love. He saw tears in her eyes, not of sadness but of cautious hope. In that moment, the past did not disappear, but it stopped controlling the future. Their relationship did not magically return to what it once was. Instead, it transformed into something new, built on lessons learned the hard way. Trust was rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. Love returned not as a reckless emotion, but as a conscious commitment. They learned to communicate, to listen, and to choose each other again, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Just before the ending, take a moment to comment below. Share your thoughts, your experiences, or simply write that you believe in second chances. Your words matter more than you know. In the end, she didn't come to finalize the divorce to close a door. She came because life demanded clarity. He froze when he realized she was 7 months pregnant because it forced him to face the cost of his absence. What followed was not a fairy tale, but something more powerful, a story of accountability, growth, and the quiet courage it takes to change. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that remind us love can heal what we once thought was broken.